We're going to be talking a bit this evening about grants in the Presbytery, grants that the Presbytery offers, and then also at the end, sort of sharing some other opportunities that are out there also in case you didn't realize and perhaps want to take advantage of them. Um, in case for some reason well, I think most of the people on this call know who I am, but for those who may be watching at a later point, if you don't know, I'm Casey Carbone. I serve as the director for Congregational Connection here in Hudson River Presbytery. And also joining this evening is Reverend Dorinda Violante, who serves as the pastor at the Denton Presbyterian Church, and is also the wonderful chair of the Grants Committee as well. So she's going to step in and sort of go over, touch on anything that perhaps I miss. But so as we look at Presbytery grants, I think just it would be helpful for a moment to frame why we do what we do in terms of grants, and sort of what helps shape the vision and our hopes of how churches and congregations use the funds that they receive. And I think that's probably best put through the lens of the mission statement of the Presbytery, which is as a resurrection people, we are engaging people's passions, building partnerships, nurturing strong leadership, and creating healthy, vital, and communities of faith, all to the glory of God. And I think that sort of frames what our hope is as we look at how we evaluate and assess grant applications that come in, and also the kind of projects that we want to inspire congregations in the Presbytery to pursue as well. So to that end, just sort of going through uh, that process and some of what I'll hope to cover at least this evening in terms of objectives and goals is understanding the purpose and the vision of grants, particularly the Challenge to Change 2.0 grant, which we'll get into, helping you understand what the requirements are, what are the eligibility requirements for congregations and for partnerships, to sort of go over that step-by-step process that goes into the application, talking about a little bit as well, the evaluation and grants reporting, not grand reporting, and also to introduce some other opportunities as well and allow time for question and answer at the end. But again, if you have anything that pops up in your mind, feel free to raise your hand or type those questions in the chat. So first, we're going to go over briefly the Challenge to Change 2.0 grant. If you are not familiar with this, that's okay. But perhaps part of the name sounds familiar, Challenge to Change. There was a Challenge to Change grant, but in recent years, the Presbytery Council and the Presbytery has formed a new one called the Challenge to Change 2.0, which is the combining of two different grants, the Challenge to Change grant and the Legacy Fund, with a similar intent to fund projects and programs that align with our mission and our vision and our commitment to leadership development, healthy, vital communities of faith, and creating nurturing, strong leadership and partners as well. So, um, it's great because I think Dorinda would attest to that it has helped streamline the process some, but it has also opened up some new possibilities as well for congregations in terms of funding, which we will get to in just a moment. For this Challenge to Change 2.0 grant, um, I don't think there's a lot of eligibility requirements besides that you be a congregation within the bounds of Hudson River Presbytery, or you are a Presbytery recognized partnership. So just to clarify what that is, in case the word partnership is often tossed around a lot. If you go to the Presbytery website, you'll see that there's a partnership page, and that identifies all the Presbytery approved partnerships that the Presbytery is in partnership with. So your church might be in a wonderful relationship with a local food bank or some other mission partner. Um, but unfortunately, the partnership side of the grant only applies to the Presbytery recognized partnerships. And then there are some denominational requirements that go along with eligibility in terms of being up to date with your session minutes, keeping on top of that, and doing some of the other pieces like statistical reportings. And we say be active in the Presbytery, and that is very open to, I guess, interpretation. I mean, we love to see you at a Presbytery meeting from time to time, or just to say hello, shake your hand, see how you're doing. But yeah, have follow those kind of denominational requirements. And there are additional documents that you'll see it within the full application, but these are sort of the key eligibility requirements for the Challenge to Change 2.0 grant. So now with this, the Challenge to Change 2.0 grant, I think it's important to break down that there's two sort of components to the grant. There's a single year or a single project grant, which is up to the amount of $25,000. This is a change if you are aware of the original Challenge to Change grant, which went up to only $7,000, I believe, the original one. So this is just understanding that the oddly enough, $7,000 does not buy you the same amount in 2025 as it did back when Challenge to Change was first founded. So part of this change was bumping that single year, single project amount up to $25,000. And those are approved by the grants committee. It doesn't require any other approval. If you are a Presbytery partnership, though, you're only eligible up to $20,000, and that's due to a separate piece called matching funds, which we don't have to really get into now, but just something to be aware of. The second piece onto the challenge of change is the multi-year piece, the multi-year, which follows in line perhaps more closely to what was the legacy fund, which is an amount up to $150,000 over the course of 3 years. You don't get $150,000 all in one lump. It usually averages out to $50,000 segments. In the past, I think some of that has been negotiated depending on how much money may be needed upfront for a certain project. Um, and these grants, so while they may be partially approved or endorsed by the grants committee, they need to also receive what we call council approval from the Presbytery Council. So there's two levels of approval that go along with this grants, with the multi-year part of the grant. And similarly to the single year project, multi-year challenge to change grants are eligible up to $135,000. Again, that's due to what's called matching funds, which partnerships are able to get up to $5,000 in funds that have been donated from congregations. So um, you work out the math that way. Um, so for these two grants, as you're thinking about, putting together an application, whether it's for a single year project or you're looking at a multi-year, some of the key criteria that the committee looks for when assessing applications that come in is understanding how your project might align with the Presbytery's vision and mission, with that mission statement that we showed up front. You don't have to go line by line through that mission statement. You can touch on, if you have a project that's about empowering people in your church or other leaders or, just building other people up, drive that point home. But just highlighting in which way, perhaps whatever project or passion you're looking at in terms of using funds for, how they might align with a Presbytery vision and mission. Um, Perhaps I shouldn't make this assumption, but the committee wants to see how there's buy-in from other people. Um, it can't just be one person from your congregation submitting an application. It needs session approval. So you need to bring it to your session, have them vote on it. Usually we get some kind of letter or acknowledgement from the clerk of session or the pastor who's the moderator saying this was discussed and approved by our congregation. And if perhaps you're working with another congregation or you are, doing some kind of collaborative work, it doesn't hurt to show that kind of documentation as well to show that whatever your project is in the grand scheme of things, this is something those involved feel really invested in. Um, and the last piece in terms of criteria is perhaps one that might not just come to mind at first is, but also helping the committee continue to learn through this process as well by submitting a final evaluation at the conclusion of your project. Um, that not just shows, everything that you did, but we would love to see like what you learned through that experience. Perhaps, other learnings or, perhaps there were some ups and downs that you would feel is helpful for other people to know if they were going to embark on a similar project. Those are some key um, criteria. And before I just go on, I just want to ask Dorinda if there's anything you feel like you want to add so far, or
No, I thank you, Casey. I think the understanding that of what other names of grants you've heard in the past, the streamlined process of meeting the needs of where we are today, and meeting the mission of the Presbytery as a whole. So dream big.
dream big
And get support.
and get support. Yeah.
Yes.
Now perhaps to touch on some of the not fun parts about grants that no one ever really likes to talk about is limitations and perhaps restrictions on how you might be able to spend that money. I know not fun, but it is a part of the process. So let's talk about the first part, which is staffing. In this new grant structure in Challenge to Change 2.0, salary support for grant sponsored programs must represent less than 25% of the grant total. That means if you apply for a grant that is, let's say, a single year grant of $25,000, only $6,250 of that can go to staff, dedicated staff for that program. Um, as you look at staffing, um, as you see on the slide, there have been some approved exceptions that are listed in the application. So these are not just exceptions that we say we make; these are ones that are printed in the application. Um, things like if your church is looking at hosting a seminary intern, if you're looking at a program where your church, for example, has continuing education and you want to invite some folks to be a part of that, in the form of a guest speaker, if your church, similar vein of musician. Also, part of the exception that's been carved out is things such as the installation of AV equipment has been carved out as a part of the staffing exception as well. Sort of defining that, I guess, what would be fall more under this restriction of the staff limitation of less than 25% or less, I should say. Um, Paid labor in the sense of if you're running a program and you're paying people to run it versus having people in the church volunteer for something, that would sort of fall under that category. If you're looking at a program director or program staff, again, similar kind of restriction. It's not that you can't put, again, it's not that you can't put any money of the grant towards it, but it has to fall within that 25 percent limitation. And part of that is, I think, just from experiences and learnings from the past. I understand that there are certain programs that require, and I think Dorinda would also say that there's programs that do require staff. But I think when you look at some of these, especially longer term projects, if staffing is only funded by the grant and there's no kind of long-term vision for how that position is sustainable once the grant runs out, it's sort of not fair then to the people who are being hired or brought into these positions really on such a short-term basis. And if there's no plan to continue it once grant money runs out. The other piece then that comes with some of the limitations and restrictions of the grant is capital improvements. Only 10% of grant monies can be awarded, can be used for capital improvements, even if capital improvements are essential to the project. So again, that means if you're looking at, I'm gonna have to do math off the top of my head. If you're looking at $25,000, you're looking at, I believe that would be 2,500 would be the max you could allocate for capital improvement. What is a capital improvement? Uh, Again, because that is such a wide range of definition. Um, Thankfully, the committee and the presbytery, as a part of the sermon process, has adopted a definition of a capital improvement, and you can find that in the actual application on the website. But the committee will refer to the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, publication 862, where it pulls its definition of capital improvement. And it lists then tons of examples of what is considered a capital improvement. Though the committee does note that it's a very full but not comprehensive list of examples. So if you are looking at perhaps including some improvements to your building as a part of grants, um, I would definitely consult um, this section of of understanding what a capital improvement is. And I would say probably within the recent year, some of the recent grant cycles, I would say it's been a very helpful document in terms of helping to sift through instead of the committee making an arbitrary decision or sort of that gut feeling of what is and isn't a capital improvement. The committee, though, I think would also probably recommend that folks, if they have not already taken advantage of it, turn to the property committee as well through the offering of their, um, I'm going to say, capital loan slash grant program, since it is a loan, but it is also partially a grant, I believe, as well with that last year. So that's just something, these are just two things to be mindful of. And as folks put together applications, don't ever hesitate to reach out and ask, as you're putting out the math together, if you aren't sure, because we're more than, willing to help you figure these things out. I'm going to move on then to the application process. Um, I think it's pretty straightforward, but as you put together your team, your group, or whoever it is, as you identify, I think what I would want to touch on is this, is that as you sort of, perhaps even if you aren't 100% sure what your idea is, I would invite you to take an opportunity to take advantage of some of the other Presbytery tools that are out there for your congregation in terms of thinking about what you might use a grant for. So for example, if you go to the Presbytery website and you go under the resource tab, um, and you click the e-learning piece, you'll scroll down and you'll see that there's a section that says Mission Insight. And if you go to the Mission Insight, you'll see that I've already generated Mission Insight reports for all the congregations in the Presbytery. And what's sort of interesting about this is as you sort of think about your community, who's in your community, you can glean some pretty useful information about who lives there, population trend, education, things like that. Even like, for example, if you're trying to gear your programming towards youth, but you see that projection of children like going down instead of up, I think that should be something you're mindful of. Uh, um, so again, if you just go onto the Presbytery website under the e-learning portal and you see Mission Insight, you'll see that you can find a Mission Insight report that has already been generated for your congregation. Just a useful tool, I think, as churches and perhaps your church plan to discern what your project may be. Um, Again, very key getting that session approval. Um, if I stress that a lot, it's because there's a reason for that. So get session approval, and any other letters needed. Be mindful as you complete the application to, we don't expect you to write a novel. You don't need to write a novel. But also, I would say, while I am very much of the belief that pith is good, you might want to write more than one or two sentences as well as you fill out the application and sort of describe what it is you all are envisioning. And the last piece is just being aware as well as the committee, while they work through these processes, you might not receive an immediate answer from them, and that is because they are working very diligently in terms of sifting through and doing their evaluation process. But it is after you go through all these steps, you'll hear back, most likely from the chair of the grants committee. Um, and so that sort of shapes the timeline, then that process as well. So application, there's two deadlines now for the Challenge to Change 2.0 grant. Either April 1st, which is It feels like it's right around the corner, even though it's not even March yet. And October 1st are the two deadlines. Typically, then the grants committee takes a month after that time to assess and evaluate all the applications. If you're multi-year, again, there may be an additional waiting period as it requires council approval. And then after all those different steps, the chair of the grants committee will let you know what the final decision is. It's important, though, to note if you miss the April 1st or the October 1st deadline, your application will be bumped to the next deadline. Um, since the grants committee it only meets twice a year now, yeah, since there are these two dates where they accept applications, if, for example, you miss April 1st, it'll be bumped to October 1st, and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
Some other considerations if you're looking at these grants is the coaching. These are more so for the multi-year pieces. So coaching. In the past, the grants committee has used liaisons to work with their multi-year grants. We're trying something new in the sense of having multi-year projects work with coaches who will work with a team and will work with the team leader as well. And this is a requirement for multi-year projects. Um, in addition, you still need to submit an annual renewal or a renewal application. And it's important to note this as a step because renewals not just automatically guaranteed. You need to complete this and submit it and go through the same steps. In addition, as well for multi-year grants, if you have not done a Holy Cow assessment within the last 3 years, you need to complete an assessment before you look at a multi-year grant as well. Before I open it up to questions, I just want to share some sample projects, some things that have been done throughout the Presbytery. Um, the Mahopac Presbyterian Church, for example, they did a wonderful job upgrading their live streaming capabilities in terms of how they use media in the church. And I may be biased. I admit, since I was part of the congregation when we submitted this application, so it's a project that, of course, is near and dear to my heart. But just an example of a lot of churches as they look at upgrading their digital ministries, such as even the White Plains Presbyterian Church, who they attended a webinar that we hosted last year through Nurturing Leadership to learn about the digital front door, which inspired them to work with a consultant to really work on improving what that looks like for them in their ministry context. Another wonderful project that was funded through these grants is one through the Ossining Presbyterian Church called Drumming for the Soul, offering a unique alternative to worship on Sunday morning by incorporating music and rhythm. Um, and really having a heavy focus on it being an intergenerational experience. The South Salem Church is another example where they have expanded their children's ministry, realizing that their growth was outpacing what they could accommodate in many ways. And so they applied for a grant to help them continue to grow that part of their ministry. And I would say another example of the kind of grants that we get is ones, for example, from the Central Presbyterian Church of Haverstraw, which is focusing on community garden. As they say, food is love, and ways that they can help not just those who are in their immediate community or their church community, but ways looking at outreach in terms of those who perhaps need help in a variety of different ways, especially those who are their immigrant and refugee neighbors as well. So, just another type of project that often comes up to the grants committee. So if any of this sounds like something, you have an idea or you want to, pursue something that you think is would be wonderful for your church, here are the next steps. Go to the website hudriffpres.org. You'll see that there's a wonderful grants tab up there, and you can download the application. Complete the application. Feel free again to reach out to myself or to Dorinda if you have any questions. and I'm sure we will help you the best we can. Um, if you want to try and reach out and connect to a past recipient, or if you want to find out if anyone has done a project, perhaps along the lines of something you're thinking about, again, reach out and we'll try and make those connections between people. And then again, just being mindful of the time frame that the committee works in the sense that um, what we will still take your application, but it will just be bumped then to the next review date for grants. I promise I will get to questions and answers, but just one more thing as a resource, which is that being a connectional church, Hudson River Presbytery, of course, offers, well, I shouldn't say, of course, not every presbytery offers grants the way we do. But being a church that being a presbytery that I think has done a lot of wonderful things in terms of funding these projects that are going on in congregations. We are part of a connectional church as well. And so the Synod of the Northeast, which Hudson River Presbytery is a member of, also offers a number of different grants. So if you go to synodne.org, they do have a grants tab, or you could um, see all the different kinds of grants they offer as well. Um, some, I believe, most of the type of projects that congregations in the Hudson River Presbytery would fall into, they fall into the amount, I believe, for the Synod grants of upwards of $20,000. Um, so you, if you want to, as well, take advantage of another resource that's out there for a project you might have in mind. I would encourage you strongly to go visit the Synod of the Northeast, as well as another potential funding source for any project you may be envisioning. Especially, they offer some campus ministry grants as well. So they offer different categories. So, for example, if your church is near a college, might be something you want to take advantage of. So I threw a lot out there in the course of 30 minutes. So if there are any questions, or if there's anything you have questions about, um, I think Dorinda or myself are happy to try and answer them to the best of our ability.